And so, well, we'll get into that. But actually, that's not the main reason for the split. God split the kingdom. And he said, I'm going to do it. He said, I'm going to take away the kingdom from the house of Solomon. The kings were warned not to take many wives. Deuteronomy 17:17. I think you probably have it in your notes. If you have it in your notes, read it with me. He must not take many wives, or his heart will be led astray. Deuteronomy. What time period are we in the book of Deuteronomy? All right, that's the time, the giving of the law in the period of the Exodus and the wilderness wanderings, isn't it? Way back then. And so the giving of the law the second time is where we get this warning. And who was it that wrote Deuteronomy? Moses. He wrote what books? Okay. Now, so when he wrote this, he was writing prophetically saying, I know the time is going to come when you guys are going to demand a king, and you're not going to want to be a theocracy like God intends. And when you do, if your king takes many wives, it's going to lead his heart astray. What a prophetic thing that was. Near the end of his reign, King Solomon's heart was turned against God by his many wives. Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. 700 wives and 300 concubines. How many kids do you think he had? We only have a record of one of them. Oh, well. 1 Kings 11, verse 1. Let's read this. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter. Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonites, and Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, you must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray, just like Moses said back in Deuteronomy. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after the other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. What a sad thing. He followed the Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. And so Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely as David his father had done. You know that Molech was a god to whom you made child sacrifices. So you would take your little child, often your firstborn, and you would put it in the arms of Molech, and then a fire was kindled underneath. And you'd burn your child, and you'd watch it. And they said there were strange contortions that happened as the fire and the heat shrunk the skin, and it made the child's face contort and make it look like it was smiling. And they thought the child was smiling at Molech. Can you imagine the horror of that? That's why God said that you're not to intermarry with those people. They're going to lead you astray. And there are things that we would think, I will never, ever do this. Right? I mean, if you were to say to them, when they were in Egypt, some of your descendants are going to be offering child sacrifices. They're going to put a child on the fire, their own flesh and blood, put it on fire and burn it up. You know, sometimes we think, I would never get involved in something so horrendous as that. And yet, you know what happens? When you associate with people in close and intimate relationships, you become vulnerable to what they believe. And God knew that. That's why he had said, you got to destroy these people. And don't let any of them live. And don't let them be among you. And certainly don't marry them or let your children marry them. See, God told Solomon that he would take most of the kingdom away from him and give it to one of his subordinates. So 10 tribes were taken from the Davidic kingship. Said he would take most of it away. All right. 1 Kings 11:11. So the Lord said to Solomon, since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant and my decrees which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. Nevertheless, for the sake of David your father, not you, father, I will not do it during your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. Yet I will not tear the whole kingdom from him, but will give him one tribe for the sake of David my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen. All right, letter D. Jeroboam's position. He was in charge of the workforce of the house of Joseph. You know what? There were lots and lots of building projects going on during Solomon's time. That guy was a builder, and he even had forced labor among the Israelites. And it so happens that Jeroboam is found to be a man of great ability, and so he is put in charge of the workforce of the entire house of Joseph. What would be the house of Joseph? Ephraim and Manasseh. That would be the house of Joseph. All right. So, 1 Kings 11:28. Now the man Jeroboam was a valiant warrior, and when Solomon saw that the young man was industrious, he appointed him over all the workforce of the house of Jacob. Jeroboam was of the tribe of Ephraim. Now that's important to know. He was of the tribe of Ephraim. You know why? See, Ephraim was the favored son of Joseph. Joseph was the favorite son, and Ephraim was the favorite grandson. But the kingly line has gone to Judah. And Ephraim always resented that. Because, you see, Joseph was given the double portion of blessing, like you would give to the firstborn. And so they could surmise from that, hey, we're the ones that are considered the firstborn because we've got the double portion. And so Ephraim would say, I have just as much of a right to the throne. Well, that was kind of the seeds of that. So, after the prophet Ahijah's prophecy, Ahijah took a new robe. This is one of the non-writing prophets during the era. He took a new robe and he tore it into 12 pieces. It's a new robe because there's been a new kingdom that's now going to be torn up. Jeroboam was to take 10 of them because God was going to give to Jeroboam 10 of the tribes of Israel. Okay, so God's offer, you need to write the word offer down there. God's offer and warning to Jeroboam. And this is so important and key for you to know, because right now, with the ascension of Jeroboam to the throne of Israel in the north, they are at a crossroads. Spiritually and politically speaking, they are at the crossroads for the north. There's been a crossroad in Solomon, but now there's another one for the north. And look what he says. This is God talking. Yeah.
Back on number F, where you have Jeroboam, to take 10 of their 10 pieces, that's symbolic of the fact they didn't touch, Senate didn't touch the throne.
Symbolic of the fact that God was going to take, he would take 10 of the tribes and he was going to give it to, okay. Now, here did I go the right direction? Yes, here we are. Verse 37. Would you read this with me? I don't want anybody to miss it, because this is so critical for the rest of this divided kingdom era. Right here, this is the crux point. This is God talking. Read it with me. I will take you, and you shall reign over whatever you desire, and you shall be king over Israel. Then it will be that if you listen to all that I command you, and walk in my ways, and do what is right in my sight, by observing my statutes and my commandments, as my servant David did, then I will be with you, and build you an enduring house, as I built for David, and I will give Israel to you. That is, oh, okay. I missed the rest of it. What happened? Okay. I missed it. Well, anyway, you've got more than I do. Well, here's the promise that he's given to him. He's saying, I'm going to, this is the same kind of a promise that God gave to David. A perpetual dynasty. A perpetual dynasty. And he is saying, as I gave to my servant David, I will give these if you will follow these things. You know what? He doesn't do too good a job. In fact, I don't think anybody was given a greater promise. I don't think anybody threw away a greater opportunity. He could have had it all secure, but instead, he did. Okay, reason number 2 for the division of the kingdom. 1 Kings 12:1. The people request that their new king Rehoboam lower the taxes. We've already kind of talked about that, haven't we? All right. But then what happens is Rehoboam consults the older advisors to say that if he gives the people a favorable answer, if Rehoboam gives the people a favorable answer, they're asking him to lower the taxes. Give them a favorable answer, Rehoboam, and then they will be loyal to you forever. Rehoboam says, okay, thank you for your advice. And he called in the second group, and they were younger people, his own peers, and he called them in. So they said, what do you think I ought to do? They said, raise taxes. Don't lower them. This is a time you're coming to the throne. Go ahead and raise taxes. So Rehoboam doesn't take the advice of the older ones, but he takes the advice of the younger men to raise taxes. And he says, if you thought my father taxed you, I'm going to tax you a whole lot more than he did. So I wouldn't put Rehoboam very high on the PR, in the PR department. He's lacking just a little bit in political savvy.